everyone, and welcome to the Culture Cast. I'm Chris Dashew, and I am joined by my returning co-host. We're talking about a horror movie, so he's back, Mr. Eric Niss.
I'm back, baby, and it's not just because it's a horror movie. It just happened to like that.
And we are also joined by your friend and mine, everyone's favorite YouTuber slash podcaster slash haunted tour guide, Mr. Mike Wallace, a.k.a. Father Malone.
Good evening, gentlemen. Looking forward to talking about this movie in ways that I can't even describe.
Father Malone to you, Mike to his friends.
Yes, indeed.
The nun to the people who see him on the street. Or no, more.
Oh, okay.
Valak. Is that what they call you now?
Just Dad.
And on this Culture Cast, we are talking about the latest entry in the Conjuring verse, Conjureverse, the Nun, and we have an interview with Bonnie Aarons, who plays the titular nun character from The Conjuring 2 and The Nun.
I had a series of visions when I was younger. And after each one ended, the same thought would be stuck in my head.
What did you see?
I saw a nun. Word of my visions reached the church, and I was asked to accompany a priest to an abbey in Romania.
The abbey has a long history.
Valak.
Not all good.
What?
Finlay him down. Callahan's here.
This film is directed by corin-hardy. This is his second directorial film. His first film he directed was The Hallow in 2015, another horror movie. This is his first big budget studio film. Film stars Demian, Bichir, Taissa-Farmiga, and Jonas Bloquet, and it follows Demian, Bichir, and Taissa-Farmiga as a priest and a nun who hasn't taken her vows yet, who go to investigate the death of a nun in Romania, and they end up confronting the demonic nun, who you may remember from the second Conjuring film. So, Mike, I'm going to kick it to you right off the bat. What did you think of The Nun?
I'm going to steal a joke from a friend of mine named Mark Richardson. How many scares are in this movie? None. This movie...
I hate you so much for making that joke.
Yeah, well, again, Mark Richardson, that's your joke. I was baffled while I was watching the movie. I did not enjoy very much of it. I guess there are a couple things that I did like about it, including the titular nun. I think she's actually really scary. I think there's a reason that they decided to give her a spin-off movie. What would have been better is if they had her throughout. In fact, I would rather have watched her just creeping people out for an hour and a half rather than just parceling her out in just a few scenes. This script was so by the numbers and bad, I was shocked. And by the numbers, I mean things would happen early on, and I would go, okay, so how does that pay off later? Like, for some reason, the movie takes place in the 1950s, right? 1955. The two lead characters are on the back of a donkey cart riding to this priory in the middle of Romania, and the lead priest character is suddenly doing a crossword puzzle. I wonder if that's going to pay off later in the movie. And, of course, it does. I don't know. This movie was not scary. I constantly wondered what the fuck I was watching over and over again. And the script is so bad that I actually really like taissa-farmiga. Is that how you pronounce her name? Like, I think she's really good. And for some reason, trying to deliver this dialogue, she seemed really bad. Also, I'll just say this. It did seem like a contest amongst the screenwriter and perhaps James-wan, who came up with the story, to figure out the least enjoyable character to follow. We have a trio of characters here, each more uninteresting and unlikable than the last. Have I laid it out for you guys? I did not like this movie.
Well, I definitely don't think there's any question as to whether or not you liked it. That's for sure.
And that answer is no. You know how much I like this movie? None.
What about you, Eric? What did you think of the darkest entry in the Conjuring universe?
Well, I think Mike put it best when he said it was... How did you put it? Garbage. This movie was garbage. It was terrible, and I hated every second of it, and it was the fucking worst horror movie I've seen, like, in a really long time, which is hard to do, because I watch every stupid fucking horror movie that pops up on Netflix every time I fucking go on the goddamn thing. So, yeah, this movie, I think what I hated the most about this movie, and Mike already touched on a lot of the things that I hated about it. It's extremely rote. It's not scary at all. And you don't give a shit about anything or anybody that happens during this movie. So my question is, why then the fuck does it exist? And it exists because it's a cool concept and there's a cool story behind it, and it has a cool tie-in to the rest of the Conjuring universe. And it's really disheartening and disappointing for me to have a movie that the story had so much potential to be awesome. You have this really awesome, terrifying the titular character, the nun, who is, I mean, honestly, spoilers, barely in the fucking movie at all. They just had such a cool concept that could be so dark and so evil and so... I mean, I've said this before, that like religious horror movies, when they're done right, are some of my favorite horror movies. The whole possession and satanic stuff. I think maybe just like growing up in a religious household like hits me on a specific level that I get thoroughly creeped out by. And this movie somehow just missed all of that and just failed to creep me out like at all, and I just didn't care about anything. And that's a total shame, and it sucks because I knew going into this movie that it wasn't going to be anything special, and it was even worse than my low expectations. To quote my own dad, I'm not mad, I'm just afraid.
So, I'm clearly not as down on this movie as you guys are. I liked parts of it. I actually really liked Demian, Bichir, and taissa-farmiga. I would watch another movie with the two of them, possibly battling something that's given more screen time. I think I get... Like
a better movie? You would just watch a better movie that was starring them?
Well, like,
I would.
Another Conjuring movie, but, like, with them doing some... Again, I don't know... It's not the actor's fault. It's the script. The script is so boring. And like you mentioned, Mike, it's so rote and kind of predictable. I mean, the guy who wrote the script for this film, Gary Dauberman, he wrote the script for Annabelle. He wrote the script for Annabelle Creation. He helped write the script for, and I believe he has some of the writing credit, but God knows how many writing credits there actually are, on It. And he has writing credit on It Chapter 2 as well, along with the third Annabelle movie and the upcoming Swamp Thing TV series.
Oh, no.
Oh, no. Who is allowing this man to keep writing things because they should
stop? Well, the problem is people go to these movies sort of regardless of how good the script is. So, I mean, this is the number one movie in America, right?
I believe so.
No.
It is. It has made a ton of money.
Yeah.
I blame teenagers who don't know what a true horror movie is, and they just go to these movies to get hand jobs and see 3 jump scares, and then that's it. And I'm not saying that I wasn't once a young person trying to go to horror movies and get hand jobs, because let's be honest, I'm almost 30 and I still do that. But I also want to watch a movie that I give a shit about while I'm trying to get a hand job. So,
well, I definitely didn't get a hand job during the movie, but I can tell you this much. It was better than Annabelle 1 and 2, but my biggest takeaway from this film is that they did a better version of the nun character, and they did the character of the nun more service in The Conjuring 2 than they did in the movie that is titled The Nun. And that's the biggest
100%.
disappointment. The biggest disappointment is that they couldn't have given Bonnie Aarons as the nun anything more to do, because she's the scariest part of this movie. The makeup that they do on her and her presence on screen is terrifying. There's a reason she's cast in this film, and she was cast again as the nun in its own standalone film, because she is absolutely horrifying and yet mesmerizing at the same time when she's on screen. And instead of that, we're given this kind of plodding, middle-of-the-road, very stereotypical horror movie, albeit it's very stylish, it's very Hammer horror, gothic. I did appreciate that, because that at least had a style to it, as opposed to Annabelle 1 and 2, which were just boring beyond words. Especially Annabelle 2.
I thought Annabelle Creations was a much better movie than this movie.
I agree.
Yeah.
And I hated that movie.
And I didn't like that movie either, but it was a much, much better movie than this.
It certainly was. And, we've got a situation here where we're going to explore this character of the nun. I was expecting an origin story. I was expecting to see this character out of the makeup who... I don't want a fan fiction right now or anything, but the fact is, like, why didn't we see this character, like, struggling with demonic forces and become this thing, at least in some part of the movie? It's just her not saying anything, which is fine. It's scary enough and all, but I kept waiting for her to talk in this movie. Am I crazy in that?
I mean, again, I expected a lot from this movie with the title The Nun.
Yeah. I thought, I'm with you, Mike. And I thought they give you almost zero backstory. And then the backstory that they do give you, they just sort of like throw up on you real quickly. They're just like, ooh, there was this guy in the Dark Ages and he opened a portal to hell and then they closed it. And then World War II happened and it accidentally opened it again. And I'm just like, oh, Jesus. Wow, that's the worst. Like, come on. You couldn't come up with something like any cooler than that? Like, I don't know. You could make this movie so much scarier by coming up with an actually terrifying premise. And they just this movie felt really forced. Everything about this movie. Everything from, the story to what little plot there was to the backstory that they gave the nun to the way that the climax happens and every jump scare and the tie-ins to the other movies. Everything feels forced. And I don't know, like this movie feels like they're like, oh shit, well, everybody thought that nun thing was like super terrifying, so we should do a movie about that, right? And they were like, shit, yeah. How fast can we get that thing into the fucking theater so we can make some more goddamn money?
And they weren't wrong.
The answer was not fast enough, yeah. So, I mean, good on them for making the fucking dough that they're making, but at the same time, like, it just sucks this movie sucks. And I think that people should not give this movie their money because this movie is making so much goddamn money, they're just going to be like, okay, cool. Movies like this sell totally fine. And it's like not going to be a big deal if we just like keep doing movies like this.
I also, early on in the movie, had to stifle my giggles in the movie theater when they effectively began the movie, not the opening scene, but when they introduced Demian Bichir's character and he's at the Vatican. It felt like a James Bond movie with Q or M handing him his dossier. And did you guys feel that at all? It was so weird, and it was clear that they want to have a series of movies now with this priest and this nun, like going around Europe or around the world and solving these problems, including going back to how rote the script was, this bullshit backstory of the priest oversaw an exorcism that went incredibly wrong, and now this child plagues him everywhere he goes. I could not be more bored by it. I didn't think the kid was scary. I was just like, oh, here we go again with this kid. That nothing pays off. It doesn't come around again at the end. It doesn't tie in at all. It was just like, felt like they were setting it up so that they can do another movie with these characters and explore that one further. And I think that is the problem with these movies. I do enjoy the idea of a shared horror universe. I don't know that anyone has really done that aside of Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein and Dracula back in the day. But
Dark Universe, please. The Dark Universe, they're going to do it. Johnny Depp is the Invisible Man. Javier Bardem as Frankenstein. How dare you forget about those movies that aren't getting made, but there's a picture in Esquire showing that they were going to make them at one point.
That's true. I stand corrected. So anyway, back on Earth, I like the idea that they were doing this, and I like the subtle little tie-ins amongst the films. By the way, was anyone else confused the fact that like Vera Farmiga is Lorraine Warren in the Conjuring movies, and now we have her sister playing another character, and I thought, like, well, what a perfect opportunity to tie those movies together this way, make her mother, or maybe that was Lorraine Warren before anything happened, and no, just happenstance, we cast another Farmiga, and we did not pay off at all.
Sir, not yet. Not yet. They said that they're going to explore that in possibly more films, which, with the success of this film, you're damn right they're going to explore it.
Yeah.
They mentioned that. I was reading about that this afternoon. They're like, well, we were going to do it in this movie, but we're probably going to make a lot of money, so let's do it in the next one. And you know what? Hey, good on them, because this money-making movie is going to make more money-making movies. Which, I mean, look, this movie is middle of the road, aside from a couple things being good. Again, namely the nun character. Jonas Bloquet is fantastic. He steals every scene that he's in. Like you mentioned, Mike, why he's not in more of the film, along with the nun, is beyond me. But whatever. I can't help but be thankful that, like you said, that the Conjuring universe is a thing, though.
Yeah, ultimately, I'm grateful for it. Like, I like that. I like the idea that there is room to grow, and not necessarily that they have to tie everything in, but I like this idea that this is a universe, and all of these things are happening in it. I just think that they keep learning the wrong lessons because they're always successful, that they're encouraged to keep doing the bare minimum. I think at this point they might want to bring in some fresh blood and maybe put this particular writer out to pasture and have somebody who's like, well, I that's a fun little sandbox you got there. Let me jump in and play now. And I think so maybe some fresh blood would be able to revitalize, at least creatively, what they've already set up. I don't think that's without the realm of possibility. I do think those first two Conjuring movies I like a lot. I like the first one markedly more than the second one. I think maybe it's time to get back to those two characters, Ed and Lorraine Warren. Those two actors sort of can knock out of the park any script, no matter how trite it could possibly be. I don't think these actors could rise above the material. I know you can make a good movie out of a bad script, but you can't make a bad movie out of a good script, or reverse that. Strike that, reverse it. This was just bad, and the other thing. And now, Eric, you mentioned you grew up in a religious background, so religious horror movies sort of strike a nerve with you. I did as well. I went to Catholic school my entire life, so when they do it right, it adds a level of creepiness that is unsurpassed. And in this case, it felt like they decided they were going to do a movie about a nun, so they cracked open a book, or they went on Wikipedia and figured out a few things that are of a religious nature, and then just kind of threw them together. There doesn't seem to be any working knowledge behind it. This isn't The Exorcist. William Peter Blatty, who's a deeply religious person, and was drawing on the traditions that. Look, I don't mean to compare this movie to The Exorcist, but
unfortunately, any movie that has these kind of themes gets compared to The Exorcist.
Yeah, and that's going to happen because they did it right.
It's true. The Exorcist did it 100% right. It's God. I mean, I don't know. Every exorcism or religious haunting movie gets compared to The Exorcist, and there's a good reason for that, and that's because really no other movie has gotten it so right as The Exorcist did. And I don't understand why that is. And I don't know. I don't know.
These movies are just coming from a place of here's a creepy idea, and now let's do a standard horror movie within that, as opposed to it doesn't seem to ever be drawn from what is creepy about the religion and the traditions therein. And this, look, I don't know what the budget of the movie was. I can't imagine it was too high. I think that's part of their formula is to make mid-budgeted horror movies. But the fact is, they knew from the get-go that whatever trailer they cut together was going to be creepy enough that they were going to get asses in seats. And it just feels like a missed opportunity. It feels like when, and seeing that when the credits come up at the end and I see James Wan's name over and over again, all I can think is, he would not have directed this script. He would have demanded it get rewritten a bunch of times. And it kind of pisses me off when a filmmaker sets a series up and then is like, yeah, good enough. Go ahead and do it. We'll just make some money. Like, that's how I always felt about the Dark Castle productions, where they were remaking William Castle's movies, where they had an opportunity to make a great movie out of what could be considered in some cases not so great. And Robert Zemeckis, who spearheaded that, was just like, yeah, that's good enough. Go ahead. Go make that movie. And that's what this one felt like. It just feels like missed opportunities, and that is a drag.
Well, you'll be happy to know that this is the 13th highest horror period piece of all time per lifetime gross. So that's fun. As of right now, it will probably reach higher into the numbers. It was filmed and released on a budget of $22 million. And so far at the box office, it has taken in 136.
Jesus Christ.
57 million domestic, 79 million foreign.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. And that's
well, maybe I'm the idiot in this case.
That's the thing. I don't think that we're idiots. I think that the issue here is The Conjuring is the 5th highest grossing horror R-rated film of all time. Okay, it has grossed a lifetime in theaters. It grossed.
Wait, The Conjuring is rated R?
It is.
Yeah, man.
It grossed $137 million. The number 1 highest grossing horror R-rated film is obviously It from last year. Whatever, that's fine. That movie's not scary at all.
Disagree.
You back me up on this one, McG. No, I mean, I don't know.
No, I don't know. I'm not McG, and you're on your fucking own, dude. That I don't know. I'm somewhere in between. That movie was. I don't think it was the. I mean, I don't know. It was okay.
So I'm not scared by horror movies anymore because that's. Well, yeah, because you thought Hereditary was the scariest movie of all time.
Not of all time, but it's fucking definitely fucked me up for a solid 24 hours. That movie was fucked.
But regardless,
I think horror movies still have the potential to scare. I'm as jaded a horror fan as anybody else, but occasionally somebody can do it. Jess and I last night rewatched the movie Don't Breathe. I think it's more of a thriller than a horror movie, but I'm going to throw it in the horror genre.
God. I love that
Eric,
movie so much.
Somebody agrees with me. Back me up
God,
on this
I
one,
love
Father
you.
Malone.
Oh, that movie's so good.
That's a great movie. Wait, who am I agreeing with here?
Makes Eric so mad when I say that movie is more a thriller than a horror movie.
It is a little bit closer to a thriller than a horror movie. But you know what? Like, you could say Silence of the Lambs is a thriller. I would say that's a horror movie. I hate that whenever anyone makes a quality horror movie, they immediately distance themselves from the label. So in that case, that director Fede Alvarez is a horror director. He did that Evil Dead remake, which I really like, and so
oh yeah, it's great.
Yeah, so I think and Don't Breathe has scares in it, man, and not just the typical jump scares that seem to be the stock and trade of this entire Conjuring series. That movie got under my skin and made me think about it for a while. So I think it's not without the realm of possibility to have a scary movie these days. And look, I'm 45 years old, and I still love horror movies, and I'm always looking for that type of unnerving and uneasy feeling you can get from a really good one. So it's possible. It's just that you have to aim higher than they're doing with this particular series.
Wait, did you not like The Conjuring?
No, I did. I liked the first one. I thought that was actually pretty scary. I thought it had some good scares that weren't necessarily just jump scares. I thought it had some definite uneasiness and like creeping dread, which is what I really want out of a horror movie. So that's why it's this law of diminishing returns with the rest of the series, where it's like, yeah, well, let's just do what worked. And by the way, stop showing all the fucking scares in the trailer, man.
Well, stop showing a lot of stuff in the trailer. That just kind of goes without saying. I'll say this much. I still think the best scare in the entire Conjuring universe, for me, is the nun painting scene in the second Conjuring movie.
It's real good.
So good. In a way that like makes you question whether or not you saw what you saw to begin with. When she turns the lights off and back on. I mean, it is so good. And then they have in this movie, they squander everything that was great. And I just don't understand. It's such a disappointment in so many ways because you clearly have a talented actress who's got a very distinct look in Bonnie Aarons. You have a series that knows exactly what it wants to be. It's period piece horror films. And yet they couldn't get a script that took advantage of both of those things completely. Look, The Conjuring is the #1 grossing period horror film of all time, okay? Do you know what the #2 is? And I hate myself that this is even on there.
What?
The Conjuring 2?
Oh, you guys aren't even going to be able to guess it because me personally, I don't even consider it a horror movie.
Luigi, Origin of Luigi?
Shutter Island.
Oh, what? That's not a horror movie. That's a garbage pile of a garbage fire.
Yeah, that's a psychological thriller if ever there was one.
That's Martin Scorsese distancing himself from horror.
Yeah, truly. Because Cape Fear, that's a horror movie, right?
Do you want to know what the...
That's not a horror movie.
Do you want to know what the third highest grossing horror period?
Unfortunately, I do.
Oh, you do, don't you?
Yeah.
Van Helsing.
Van Helsing? Jesus Christ.
What did you think?
That is not a horror movie. That's a minstrel show. That's awful.
I love Van Helsing. I think it's fucking awesome.
I like Van Helsing a lot, too.
It's just like...
Oh, my heavens.
It's just like old school, awesome, universal horror like in the 2000s. It's just an action horror movie for the masses, and it's wonderful, and I don't care.
That is an action movie. It's not a horror movie. It is.
I will agree with you there. However, I like Van Helsing because for me it always felt like The Mummy with more Universal monsters, which is essentially what it is.
Yeah.
And I don't know about you, Mike, but I love the 1999 Mummy with Brendan Fraser. So
it's fantastic.
No.
Oh God! Can I level the thing that everyone always says about me? You hate everything that's good. That's what I always get that fucking moniker. I hate everything that's
No, you know what? Listen, man. Like, look, I love movies because in any kind of art, it's completely subjective. You can take out whatever you want, and I'm not going to tell you you're wrong because you enjoyed something. However, in this case, everyone is wrong. The Mummy should be a horror movie, not an action movie. They keep remaking The Mummy and they keep making action movies. They just did it again. Like, what? Can we have some scares? I don't know. Maybe I'm a purist in that way.
At least The Nun is higher on the horror period list than number 16, The Ghost and the Darkness, the Michael Douglas Val Kilmer film about them shooting lions in Africa.
The lions?
No.
Oh my God.
That's a terrible movie.
Stephen Hopkins directed that movie. That movie is dreadful.
I'm glad that The Nun is where it is, but
yeah.
Wow. What a weird...
I will take that over many of these movies that you're listing. I would retract some of my criticism. I think this movie does have a couple of scares. They're jump scares, but they're still effective. I don't like the over-reliance on just a sudden, loud, burst of volume to equate the scare, which they rely on way too much in this series.
In all of horror, I mean, you essentially just described it. The film It, that's all it was loud noises with a scare. Loud noise.
That is true, but there is that. You know what? There are a couple of moments that I think really were effective when the kids are watching the slideshow and he comes out of the thing. I thought that was a good scare. I think when they were trapped in that house with him and he comes out of the refrigerator and is slowly working his way towards him, I thought that was creepy and effective. I think that movie has more scares than you're giving it credit for.
Maybe you might be right, but
meh. I mean, yes, that movie has definitely a lot of jump scares, but it has a lot of effective scares as well. Whether or not you like it for other reasons is sort of irrelevant, but...
Yeah, I mean, well, I think at this point we're just kind of describing movies that rely on jump scares versus the sort of creeping dread that you really actually want. You want to feel your skin crawl in some way. And
let's be honest here. There's nothing wrong with jump scares.
No, absolutely. If you're looking... I mean, there's nothing wrong with roller coasters. You know what I mean? You get out what you put in. And that's totally valid and a reasonable thing to expect from a horror movie. I just think that in this situation, I've said it already, I'm going to say it again, like they're squandering an opportunity. They know people are coming to these movies anyway. They can give them whatever they want. And
why not give them something interesting?
Yeah, they're settling, man, and that sucks. That's like the height of laziness creatively, and it's just a huge drag.
Well, I think this is about as good a spot as any to take a break and play the interview that I had with Bonnie Aarons, who played the nun in The Conjuring 2 and the film we've been talking about, The Nun. So we'll play that interview and we'll finish up talking about the film when we get back. What initially drew you to the role of Valak in The Conjuring 2?
Well, I got the audition. That's what drew me to it. But, I was so thrilled because I'm a huge fan of James-Wan's. And I always knew if I got in front of him, he would hire me.
Kind of walk me through the audition process. What was that like? What did you kind of draw from inspiration-wise when you went into the audition to kind of give them your best for the role of Valak?
The audition was you just had to go in there and scare the crap out of everybody. So I just went in there and did that. There was nothing. I went in there and scared them.
You got cast. You were working on The Conjuring 2. What was it like finally getting to work with James-Wan? And
well, okay, so I went on the first audition, and then, of course, it was put on tape for, the director and the producers. And then, of course, because I would get the call back, I got the call back, and so we had to go to the studio. It was me and two men there, actually. And for this callback, they put us in the nun's habit, and first they put on makeup, They put makeup on us. And, Eleanor Sabatakoya and Hugo, I can't pronounce his name there, and they put makeup on us three. And there was no way. I knew I was going to get this job. There was no way. I was giving these two guys a stink eye, man. I'm telling you. I was like, turn my head and look at them getting made up. No, I'd give them, ooh. Because no one was going to take this job away from me. No one. I knew I was going to. Then we each went, and I was up second, and we worked with James-Wan and the team. They actually filmed you and doing, scary stuff. And, I believe, there's just no way it would take. I wouldn't even leave the audition until they told me I got it. It was so funny because one of the producers said to me, "Okay, now you can go and we'll contact you in a little while. We'll contact you in a little while. We have to think about it." And I said, "What's there to think about?" And he laughed, and then I went to walk out, and he goes, "You know what? Come back. You got the job."
I find it kind of interesting that you were up against two men for the role of Valak.
Where is that women are playing horror people in these horror films? There aren't. It was truly an equal opportunity in job employment. I mean, absolutely, this was equal opportunity. And where do you see many monsters being played by women?
What is it like being the first female horror kind of icon monster?
It's fantastic. I think it's really great. I mean, I love the fans, and the fans are fantastic. I mean, they're so talented, so incredible. They're actually very funny. I mean, you should see this. I'm sure you've seen all the stuff that they've done. It's amazing. And, I've been at this for a very long time, and I've always believed in myself, and I never gave up. I mean, so it's fantastic. I mean, I'm grateful to Ron and to New Line and Warner Brothers for allowing me to play this creature. And
so obviously you had a substantial role in The Conjuring 2, your character at the end of the movie.
No. I worked on The Conjuring 2 for about 5 days. Yeah. I was, it was already in post, and apparently James-Wan just didn't like the monster he had in there. And, I just he made this character up. It's like, I just popped right out of james-wan's mind. Isn't that a wonderful thing? He's such a genius. And he just made this character up, and they held the audition, and it was put in. I mean, this movie was in post. It was already finished, and then he opened it back up and reshot with me. I mostly did it on a green screen. Well, they rebuilt some of the sets and stuff, on the lot there in a hangar.
Right. That's interesting.
It's funny because And by the way, when I went out for the callback, I still didn't know it was for The Conjuring 2. I did not know what it was. Because for the audition and stuff, it was just like an untitled james-wan film. I just james-wan, that's it. I got a chance to get in front of james-wan. I mean, I was there an hour before my audition time or more, just so I wouldn't be one moment late.
Right. So the film was in post-production, and they added your character in post.
Well, it was already finished, and they reopened it up.
Wow. Well, that's interesting because, again, like I said, I mean, I felt like your character has a pretty big part in the second Conjuring film because the scares in the second film, the ones that are most memorable for a lot of fans, myself included, have to do with the nun character. Especially my favorite scene in all of the Conjuring films, any of them, is the painting room scene.
That was so funny. So I'm on a green screen and we're doing this. Actually, we're doing this. It was so funny because it's like, so they're going, well, move your head. You're like, this. I said, oh, you mean to tell, after doing this, I go, oh, you mean to tell me my head's going to come through the frame? And they're like, yes. Okay. Well. So it was pretty funny. It was cool. Yeah. The brilliant man.
Yeah, I think that it's one of the most effective scares in the film because it's, I don't know, the whole flipping the lights off and then you being there and then flipping the light back on and then it's just the painting. It works so well and it's so understated in a way that once the scene really ramps up, it becomes really terrifying.
Yeah, he's a genius. He's a genius. The scenes, everybody has their opinion. Like a lot of people think, me in the hallway, who's that? Is the scariest thing. Or, me, when I turn and blow her against, blow Vera against the wall, turn my head and snarl. They think that is, it's just a lot, everyone, it's absolutely beautiful.
So for you personally, what was your favorite scare in the film?
That's very difficult to say. I mean, I loved it all. I thought the Crooked Man was so cool. I mean, that is like, that was like so cool. I loved all my parts, and it's, Vera Farmiga is an incredible actress, I like the mirror scene too a lot, dun, 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 dun. It's like, I said to James, I see, I'm your weeping angel.
Mentioning Vera Farmiga, obviously you were cast again in The Nun.
Well, I didn't have to audition. Yeah, I didn't have to. I didn't have to go in and audition. That's always nice, right?
Yeah. So I'm curious, which of the Farmiga sisters was it more fun to menace?
And a lot of my scenes, she's a great scene partner. I love Taissa. She's a very generous scene partner. It was fantastic. I mean, you're trying to. I love the water scene. It was just funny because I'd be hanging over her, waiting, and I'd be looking at her, and she'd turn her head away, and then she'd like roll her eyes back and then turn her head away. She's so darn cute, Even when I get her scared and jumpy, she's adorable.
So describe to me kind of the difference working on The Conjuring 2 versus working on The Nun. Obviously, there was a different director. You had Corin-Hardy was the director of The Nun. You had James-Wan in The Conjuring 2. What was the difference working on those two films?
Okay, well, for one thing, I had a lot of time with Corin-Hardy. Okay, I really didn't. With James-Wan, it was only a few days, and James-Wan was directing. I mean, he was this man. I mean, he was just going around the hangar directing, 3 different of the sets at the same time. And with Corin is so unbelievable to work with, and I got to really work with him. And we'd be like going, yeah, the monster's got to be like this or like that. And then he's, it's like, yeah. I remember before I even got to him, and before I even met, we were on a site, and he's saying, listen, it's very important. I got this scene to do with water, okay? And he says, can you hold your breath underwater? I go, well, I don't care, I'll do it. And then eyes up, like Marlon Brando in Apocalypse Now. I'm like, yeah, I want to do that. So I did. I went in the water, and I held my breath for, I don't know, a long time. And I waited till the water was, I had my eyes open. I waited till the water was completely filled before I rise. It was like, I do that. I'm like, well, let me tell you something. My desire for that scene to come out looking perfect overrode any desire I had of taking a breath. Oh, it was simple. But I mean, to work with Corey, it's like he got so into it. He would bring his passion and his love of the film and his work to the set every day. And his enthusiasm was just infectious to everyone and contagious. Just wonderful to work with. And I didn't, with james-wan, I only worked with him a few days, and this man was like in a crunch. I don't think, he was in a crunch. So, I mean, they're both geniuses. You can never really, they're both geniuses. You can't really compare them. I love them. And so it was really nice to work, to be able to really collaborate with Corin and when I'm on screen, every little bit is being pretty much directed. So, like, even where we start the scene and the way, if I turn my eyes, if I blink, it's directed. You know what I'm saying? If I tilt my head a certain way, it's directed. So he was there, everything precisely of my movements was directed. And so, the other cast members were very helpful. They were, okay, let's fix up that, how it has to go. Between each takes and whatnot.
Obviously, since you got to work on the entire film, you were on location in Bucharest. What was it like filming on location in Romania?
Well, that castle, it's a castle in Transylvania. It's a 15th century castle called Corvan Castle. It is magnificent. It's just incredible. It's breathtaking. Actually, when you're actually in the setting, this terrific, amazing, beautiful, Gothic setting already. And then you have this incredible production designer, Jennifer Spence. It adds so much to it, that you're in the actual castle. You're in the real deal. So it was magical. And we traveled across, Romania to film this. We went to, we were in Bucharest. We filmed at, Castle Studios there. But then we went, onto locations. The locations in across Romania over to Transylvania, and it was absolutely magical. You could see green rolling hills as far as I could see. There were these forests, and you literally saw hobbits and fairies and dragons were to come flying right out of it. It was absolutely magical.
You did have a very memorable and kind of iconic role in Mulholland Drive. Are people now on the street kind of recognizing you for the nun more? I'm assuming they must be.
Yeah, people recognize me. Yeah, people do. People recognize me. It's not that much makeup I'm wearing, to tell you the truth. Take a close-up of the pictures, not that much makeup. But the people are great. I really appreciate it. I'm very grateful that all the fans enjoy my performance. What more could someone ask for? You do, an acting job, and as an actor, you're trying to make the audience feel an emotion. So it's the greatest thing. It's I'm very honored. I am so honored and ever so grateful to them for allowing me to play this character.
Are you a fan of the horror genre?
I love it. I grew up with horror. My parents loved horror. Yeah, I love the horror genre. It's so much fun.
I don't know. There's a lot more creativity with the horror genre than so many other genres, because you get to have a demonic nun chasing people through a castle in Romania. And tell me another genre that allows for that.
No, they're not. And it's got to say that it is also more of an equal opportunity job, genre where, they usually have, the scream queens and then usually the men are playing the monsters, like we said before. So, it's wonderful. It's good. It's good. It's nice. I hope I inspire a lot of people.
Well, that's my hope as well, is that, with the success of the film, again, it had a massive opening weekend. So my hope is that more horror writers, screenwriters, and directors will see your film and be inspired to give us more horror female icons that rival the ones that, the kind of the quote-unquote classics that already exist.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be nice. Well, they can see somebody that, a woman can do it,
Well, and again, for me personally, the nun in The Conjuring 2 is much scarier than anything else in the film, which, again, testament to your performance.
Thank you very much. That makes me very happy. I'm honored. Thank you so much.
I rewatched The Conjuring 1 and 2 before I went and saw The Nun to kind of prepare myself for the film, and they did a really good job also in The Nun of kind of giving fans of the series little kind of tidbits throughout the film to kind of pick up on that, kind of tie back to stuff from the first film and the second film.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, they were really good. They're great storytellers. They're really great storytellers, and Corin-Hardy really knows how to see. He's such an amazing artist and talent and visionary. For one thing, he can so easily bring out a performance out of an actor, and he knows how to put his images, because he had the sketchbook. Oh man, what a beautiful sketch art! And he knew how to put this onto the screen.
Well, again, I personally think it comes through because if we're talking about the style of the first two films versus this film really stands out, especially from even Annabelle 1 and 2. Annabelle 1 and 2 felt very similar to the Conjuring films. So that's my hope, is that The Nun will kind of open the door more in this Conjuring universe for more stylistic kind of movement in the universe, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, it makes sense. It's a lot of fun. It's been a long time since there's been a Hammer-style horror film.
Yeah, especially one that makes as much money and is as mainstream as The Nun has become, which is a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing. While
working on The Nun, was there any sense that there was going to be anything more with your character past this film?
I have no idea. I have no idea. Who knows? They can do whatever they want. I think every time James-wan blinks his eye, he comes up with a new idea. I have no idea. I don't know. I don't know. I'll know when I'll hear about it.
I was about to say, I would guarantee you probably don't have to audition. Let's put it that way. So
yeah. Well, you know what? Who knows about that? You know what? That's a good one. One can only, whatever. I have no idea what they're doing. I would love to. If they do it, I would love to. The fans truly love it because they can tell. People can tell when you're really doing something. It's because it affects people so much. It's so effective. I've had people had to come meet me because they were like, "Oh my God, I can't sleep." I've had people tell me they haven't slept for a year or this, and I was haunting them, and they were scared, and they all saw me, and people saw me. I'm like, okay, good. They love it.
That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Have a hunger for horror? A yen for Yelp yarns? Then give your blood-curdled bones a boon and tune in to Chronicles from the Crypt. Join sordid slime slingers Casualty Chris and Father Malone as they take on HBO's groundbreaking television series, Tales from the Crypt. Here's what the rotting and rancid rabble are saying about Chronicles from the Crypt. Tune in to Chronicles from the Crypt. You have nothing to lose except your life.
Who is Carl Kolchak?
He's a reporter.
Now that is news, Vincenzo. News! And we are a newspaper. We are supposed to print news, not suppress it.
With the INS.
What's an INS?
Independent news service, sir, founded in 1904 by Enrico Paluzzi.
Who seems to have a nose for the strange and unusual.
Well, last year in Las Vegas, I uncovered a series of murders that turned out to have been committed by a vampire.
And what is the Kolchak Tapes?
It's a podcast.
All about Carl Kolchak.
What's a Kolchak?
The Night Stalker.
And where can you get it?
On iTunes, Stitcher Radio, and at www.kolchaktapes.com.
As foolish a game as any that Gory the Ghoul could make up.
Here's what some people are saying about the Projection Booth podcast.
Week after week, I'm mesmerized by the focus given great films and questionable films alike. But every episode is a learning and entertaining experience.
This is hands down the best movie podcast. They cover so many different genres across so many years, from obscure movies to blockbusters.
If there's only one podcast about movies and cinema that you listen to, make it this one.
The Projection Booth Podcast, with new episodes available every week at projectionboothpodcast.com.
In 1985, a curious phenomenon occurred. The Twilight Zone returned to television, featuring all new tales of mystery and imagination from the minds of Ray Bradbury, Harlan Ellison, George R.R. Martin, and Stephen King. Dreams for Sale, the Twilight Zone 85 podcast looks back at that land of shadow and substance and re-examines the groundbreaking successor to Rod Serling's legacy. Featuring new interviews with the show's creators and cast, Dreams for Sale can be found on iTunes and at twilightzone85.com. Dreams for Sale. We'll be waiting for you in the Twilight Zone.
All right, we are back and we are finishing up talking about The Nun. So we've been talking the Conjuring Universe, we've been talking numbers, we've been talking R-rated horror movies and jump scares and kind of the genre at a kind of a macro level. The Nun right now, widest opening 7th of all time for R-rated film, which is absolutely insane. So
wait a second, this movie was rated R?
So that's the thing I wanted to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
Like Eric said about The Conjuring, why didn't this movie take advantage of the R rating?
It didn't.
No.
At all.
Not.
Why is it rated
That's what
R?
I'm saying. Why didn't it?
Like, there's not one set of boobs. I don't think they say fuck one time.
Nope.
Like, nobody, like, gets eviscerated to death or anything, like, insanely gory like that. Like, what the fuck? Why is this movie fucking rated R?
No, I was
Good
wondering
question.
that myself, because for me, it makes no sense as to why the movie's rated R.
Like, maybe it was rated R and then they took some R-rated scene out and then they forgot to change the rating back to, like, PG or whatever this movie should have been rated because it was a fucking childish piece of trash. God, I hate this movie so much. It was so bad.
You know, it might be specifically just because it was religious themed. That tends to set some of the members of the MPAA on edge. And
as seen in This Film Is Not Yet Rated, yes, it sure does. And just so everyone is aware, it was rated R for terror, violence, and disturbing / bloody images. By the way, that is the most innocuous
Bullshit.
R rating I've ever heard.
Yeah, it's just a arbitrary. It's a horror movie that has, like, that is kind of scary. It's rated R. Like, fuck you. No, this movie should.
Yeah,
barely be
do
rated
scares equal R? Yeah, PG-13 I think probably would have been a proper rating for this movie. Yeah, and you know, they knew they were getting an R rating and they didn't play to those strengths. I mean, you know, you said it kind of glibly, there's no boobs in this movie, but you know what? Like, how about some sort of twisted sexual horror going on with this order of nuns?
God.
It could have been creepy as hell.
I was waiting for nun boobs the whole time and it didn't happen once.
Well, and that's the whole thing about kind of everything that happens in the film is, you know, the kind of the twist of the movie being spoilers that all the nuns have been gone this whole time and they've been investigating essentially abandoned / all the nuns have been murdered monastery is so, oh my god.
Didn't care.
If you didn't see it coming from a mile away, you didn't care when they did it.
But she has visions.
Yeah. Why were there no zombie nuns? Why weren't they a threat instead of aiding them this entire time?
Well, there was one zombie nun. Two, excuse me.
Two, and yeah, and those scenes were kind of cool. And how about, and yeah, I mean, you know, when we got near the end, first of all, let me just mention this one scene because I laughed out loud when it happened. When taissa-farmiga, like, they rush to the chapel because they need to pray in order to keep the evil at bay. So they form this circle around her while they're praying. But before that happens, the nuns march in lockstep like some sort of military squad before bolting the door. That made me laugh. It was just so silly.
It definitely, there was like a little bit of like Stormtrooper Star Wars action.
Yeah, man.
And then I was waiting for the Imperial Death March or something to start playing, like when that happened.
That was all very silly, and Because after that, we get a couple of scenes where the characters are separated and they are surrounded by these ghostly versions of the nuns, like an entire room with like faceless ones. And then there's the Frenchy character, interesting name, that very creative, where he has to try and figure out which one of them is Vera Farmiga because they all have bags on their heads, which smacked to me of the nurses in Silent Hill, which is
exactly what I thought.
And that in that Silent Hill movie, it's okay, but the nurse scene in it is fantastic. And all I kept thinking while I'm watching that is, God, I should really watch that scene in Silent Hill again.
I just think, again, the ultimate issue with this movie I had is there are some cool set pieces. And I do like that this is set in a Romanian monastery, and it definitely has the feel of it. But it's outside of that, it's not anything special. And like you guys are mentioning, there's some kind of interesting visuals. I think the tie-in at the end to the original Conjuring movie is clever because I didn't remember that at all. And
Me either.
It kind of ties in an organic way, in a way that didn't feel forced, which I thought was really good. Outside of the Valak thing, which was pretty obvious if you've seen The Conjuring too. But it turns out that one of the characters is possessed at the end of the film, and then if you've seen the first Conjuring movie, you see that character when the Warrens are presenting their kind of doing their little song and dance, and then that's when Lily Taylor's character confronts them about her house. I thought that was kind of cool. Because,
that was neat.
Right. I didn't remember that the character in that scene, his name was Maurice, and that was like, what's your actual name? And he says Maurice, which I guess if you're really into the Conjuring universe, you would have been like, fuck, that's crazy. Which...
Right.
Bad on me, I guess, for not remembering. I meant to watch the first two movies before I saw The Nun. I ended up watching them after. So, again, I thought that worked really well. But again, like you guys have been saying, it's just they're given so many good pieces. And they end up just making something that feels like it doesn't feel special. Some of these Conjuring movies, The Conjuring 1 and 2, as much as I know Eric doesn't like it, because they have positive endings.
Yeah, fuck horror movies with happy endings. This is bullshit.
Well, you know what? Like a perfect example, if you compare this movie...
Like, those movies feel good. They're a throwback period piece horror movies with a great cast. Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga are fantastic together. I would watch anything that they're in. But
that entire family in the first film are so charming, and you like every one of them, that every time something bad is happening to them, you feel it, and you don't want it. You're actually experiencing horror. These three characters, they could have done anything with them. They're blank slate. Didn't give a shit about any of them, was just waiting for the scares, waiting for the nun to show up.
Which is unfortunate because your introduction to Taissa-farmiga, I think, is pretty good. Like,
it's pretty cute.
Scene, her intro scene is pretty good because you're like, well, this is a nun, and she's kind of being really kind of jovial and kind of loving with these kids. And then
not only that, but progressive in the face of like 1950s sort of devout Catholicism. So I was kind of expecting that, like, where she's been having visions, but she also views... There never came a time where she was like leaning toward science. There was no battle between science and spirituality. There was no battle in anything. There was no real creative drama to be had with any of these characters and their psyches. It was just like, oh yeah, he had an exorcism once, and now he's going to be plagued by this kid, and now she's being plagued by I don't know, man. It was all just paint by numbers.
Which, again, it's unfortunate because I hold the Conjuring universe to a higher standard because of how good the Conjuring 1 and 2 have been. However, the Annabelle 1 and 2 sequels have not been great. But that could also have something to do with the fact who's writing them, because Gary Dauberman wrote both of them. So I think
he's not spectacular.
Time to kind of leave him behind, move on to something else. The Conjuring 1 and 2 are great. I believe that those films are both written by James-wan, or at least he has a hand in writing them, because, like you said, James-wan would not have directed this movie. Not
at all.
No way. So,
nope.
That's my biggest takeaway here is the movie is not as good as the sum of its parts. It's just not. There's some good things, but ultimately it stumbles in a way that I think is disappointing, because, I mean, I know Eric knows that I was kind of looking forward to this movie. And outside of a couple things, it's just kind of disappointing.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it too. I like taissa-farmiga. I like this nun character. I think she's creepy as fuck. And I've generally had a better time than not in this universe. So for it to be as poor as it is like a crushing disappointment. This isn't me just railing on this movie as if it's just total garbage, but it is total garbage. It's just, I don't know. It's just it's shocking how little foresight and sort of creative vision ended up going into it.
Yeah, man, I agree with Mike wholeheartedly. Really, like, I went into this movie expecting it to not be good. With the exception of maybe like the first Conjuring movie, and then by extension, if we're talking about like james-wan universe stuff, like maybe the first Insidious movie, maybe the second one also a little bit. I think every single movie that comes out has just like, it's none of it captures that initial spark that like made these movies worth watching, that made, as much as I'm not a huge fan of The Conjuring, and I'm not a fan of it not because it's not a good movie, I'm just not a fan of it because I think the happy ending that it has sort of like undermines the rest of the movie, and it makes it so that the high stakes that were there the entire time mean absolutely nothing. But that's just me being a crotchety old man about the fact that I hate happy endings in movies that shouldn't have them. But I'm just bummed that you have this awesome universe to play with and this sort of like infinite number of movies that you can make sort of like surrounding the lore of like the Warrens and the cases that they've had. I mean, in the first Conjuring movie, when you see that room of all the little artifacts and everything that they've had from all their cases, like, holy shit, that's hundreds of movies that you could make. That is an infinite, you could make one every year for the rest of, everybody's lives, and you'd never run out of shit to do. It's just a shame that the stuff that they're like just pumping out seems to have very little thought and very little heart and very little effort behind it. I agree with Chris that I think it would be in the best interest for this sort of universe and these movie franchises to bring in some people who have not been writing for these movies for the past, 5 or 6 years or whatever. I think that would be the best thing for this franchise, is to bring in some new people who want to play in the sandbox and who want to do things differently, more creatively. I mean, God, this movie was what, $20-ish million budget? Like, for some directors, like a lot of the horror movies that I see, a $20 million budget is like so much money compared to like what you need to make a good horror movie. Like $20 million, like how much of the $20 million budget do you think that they spent in this movie on like the CGI and like effects and stuff? Probably a fucking gigantic chunk of it. Like, scale back all the CGI and like the shitty cheesy effects like that, you don't need to be scary, and focus on actually writing a terrifying script and then executing a terrifying story that actually gets under your skin and makes you think and feel, instead of just making you jump every, 20 minutes or whatever with a loud noise. And then you're going to have a movie that's not only effective and it's going to put asses in the seats, but then you're going to make people happy like us who actually want to see these movies like mean something more than just like dollar signs on a page, which is unfortunately what they've become. They're just money-making vessels now, and that's sad for us, for people who care.
Well, I can tell you this much: Annabelle 3 is not going to be bucking the trend, because Gary Dauberman is not only writing, he is also directing.
Oh, spectacular. That's going to be a good one.
Yeah, I have no interest in watching it, but I will watch it for the sake of science. So, Mike, what would you give this film out of 5?
Oof. Geez. I'm going to be generous and say 2.
What about you, Eric?
I'm going to give this movie a solid 1 out of 5.
Yeah, I'm going to give it 2.5. I mean, again, it's just, there's so much about this movie that could have just been really stellar. And, I mean, you've got such a blueprint in The Conjuring 2 of what this could be. with that scene, the painting room scene with the nun. And it's so scary and so well done. And they ape it in this movie, but they didn't need to because they've already done it.
They didn't do themselves any favors at the beginning by showing that scene again, reminding you how awesome it was, and then this is what we got.
Yeah. I think, again, and, The Conjuring 3 is supposedly coming out next year, which will be cool. If James-wan is directing, that's kind of the only way I think it's going to be successful. I mean, it's going to be successful one way or another, as seen by how much money The Nun made. So, well, we'll take another break and we'll play a preview for the next Culture Cast. That's right, on the next Culture Cast, we are talking about Lone Wolf and Cub, the second film of Samurai September. Until then, what have you been up to, Father Malone?
I'm hosting a bunch of podcasts these days. I co-host one called Chronicles from the Crypt, re-examining the HBO television series based on the 1950s EC comics. I do that twice a month, and once a month I also co-host one called Dreams for Sale, that examines the groundbreaking revival of The Twilight Zone in the mid-1980s. That's been pretty much eating up all of my time, as well as, guiding tours and stuff at the Haunted Museum.
And if you're in Las Vegas, make sure to check out Mike down at the Haunted Museum. Tell him Valak sent you. Oh, boy. What about you, Eric? What have you been up to in the last, month since you've been on here?
I'm living out of a storage unit at the moment. Trying to make it in Los Angeles. No, I don't know. For real, I've just been moving and trying to find a new place to live. My living situation sort of fell apart on me at the last possible second, and that was kind of a bummer. So I've just been sort of trying to deal with that for the past month while working, and that's pretty much it. I have been watching movies, but I have nothing. I watch movies all the time, and I see things, and I just don't there's nothing that has really been twisting my titty, getting my attention. I don't know, whatever you want to call it. I'm excited to be back talking about movies, be they good, bad, or otherwise. I'm excited to talk about The Predator. I'm excited to talk about some samurai movies, because god damn it, I love me some good samurai movies. I'm excited for October because it's coming fast, and I hope that means that there's going to be a lot of good horror movies like around in general, not even necessarily coming out. I know there's a few. There's Halloween, there's some other ones that I can't think about right now, but I don't know. I'm excited for the coming season of movies and other stuff that's going on. I don't know what the fuck has been going on. I've missed so much stuff. I don't even know.
Well, we're still here doing the podcast thing, so that's what we're doing. Just been a lot of podcasting, a lot of exciting stuff. Been doing a lot of stuff. Mike has been here. Other Mike Whitey has been here. Wallace has been here. Everybody's been here helping out and getting podcasts done. So if you want to check me out on Twitter, head on over to Twitter at CultureCast. If you want to find me on Twitter, I am at CultureStash. Eric is on Twitter at TychoMagnetics. Mike is on Twitter at FatherMalone73. You can follow the website over at CultureShock.com. You can follow the podcast over at CultureCast.com. We are on all podcatcher apps, both iOS and Android. Give us a favorable review on iTunes. Helps other people that like movies find the podcast. And big thanks as always to Erica and Wovoka and my good buddy Justin Scott for the intro-outro. Mike, big thanks to you for taking time out of your schedule to watch The Nun.
My pleasure. Well, kinda.
Big thanks to Bonnie Aarons for sitting down and talking with me about The Nun, and we'll catch you on the next CultureCast.
You know how we do, I'm just two-step, drink in my right hand, phone in my other hand, getting to the money, oh man, two-step, posted with